Good morning and welcome to another episode of The Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. As always, I'm your host, Roland Rainey, and joined with my fellow colleagues, Justice Gordon from New York, Jeremy Coleman from Indiana, and Robert Parker from New Jersey. And ladies and gentlemen, what a weekend that has kicked off. Right now, we are having the 2021 NFL Draft. And gentlemen, the first round on Thursday was definitely a night to remember. A lot of surprises, a lot of surprise trades that a lot of folks weren't really predicting. But let's start right off where the draft began. And that was with pick number 3, the San Francisco 49ers going out and getting Trey Lance and not getting Mac Jones or Justin Fields. Was he the right pick, Justice, for the 49ers?
I think he was a solid pick. We talked about Bill Belichick's poker face on the live stream on Thursday, but I got to say I'd rather have the 49ers poker face because they duped everyone on this pick. First it was Mac Jones, then it was Justin Fields, and now it's Trey Lance the day of. I think they did an incredible job holding it close to the vest. As far as Trey Lance goes, I think he has enormous talent, enormous potential, but, they have the luxury of sitting him, and I think they should. I think he shouldn't see the field in his first year. I don't care if the fans are banging on the facility door. You do not start this kid. You let him sit. You have the luxury of having a veteran quarterback, start and, hold the bridge over for him, but he needs time to develop. He needs time to adjust to the speed of the game, and I think they should sit him for at least a year.
Yeah, he's a really athletic prospect. I think his best football is in front of him. I don't know what type of coaching, he got at North Dakota State. But, he was 17-0 in his career there. So, he's a winner. He brings the right attitude in. Supposedly he was praised for how smart he was in the pre-draft process. That's something Kyle Shanahan really digs in. He wants his quarterbacks, have something more between the ears than just football. So he fits. I'm a little worried more just about his long term, just because his best football probably is still yet to be played. I'm still a little worried about the player overall. It's a big jump in competition. I'm still not completely sold on his arm talent, but he's a talented player. He's like Justice said, he's going to be able to sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo for at least a year, maybe more if Jimmy Garoppolo, kind of returns to, Super Bowl form, so to say. So it's a good pick for their future. It's an investment in their future. That's what they did.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Justice and Jeremy, in regards to the investment that San Francisco made. We talked about it, the last month for the most part, with the 49ers trading up to kind of get that number 3 pick. And if you're going to trade up to get the number 3 pick, you want someone that can transcend your franchise. And they thought that's what Trey Lance does. Mac Jones, you kind of know what you're getting from Mac Jones. Trey Lance really hasn't hit the surface of what he can do moving forward. So that's pretty much what you're investing in, his potential. And that's where, those top 5 picks kind of happen and you get drafted on your potential. And that's what Trey Lance did. He came out and he had a great pro day. Just like Jeremy said, Kyle Shanahan and the staff said he's a smart young man. He's did everything that you asked him for. So Jimmy G is not going anywhere. They have the luxury of having Jimmy G there, built with that roster that wasn't there last year because of all the injuries and the COVID thing. So therefore, it's going to be, it's like Justice said, you're going to sit him. You're not going to play him this year no matter what the fan base says, no matter how much Jimmy Garoppolo struggles. You don't play him this year. You just let him sit and you let him learn. And I think he can shape up to be a franchise quarterback moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all your sentiments there about this young talent. But I do draw concern with the level of competition that he's experienced throughout his tenure there at North Dakota State. That's different competition versus a quarterback who comes from the realm of the SEC. Justin Fields, Ohio State. That's just a different pedigree of player, but they believe that this guy is the future of their organization. So definitely wish them well there. So speaking of Mac Jones and Justin Fields, let's talk about where they ended up. So Justin Fields ended up getting picked up by the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears traded to get him. And then, of course, New England didn't have to do much of anything and ended up with Mac Jones. So let's start with Fields. Is he a great fit for the Chicago Bears?
Well, first off, bravo to their front office. They stayed very patient and still found a way to make the splash move that they needed to make to go up and get a guy like Justin Fields, a guy who they could take and be considered a franchise quarterback. Justin Fields is a very talented guy. We all thought he could go as high as 2 before, the season started. Ended up falling to 10. I think they're getting a great talent here. He can make all the throws. And there's not pressure to come in and start right away, even though he probably will, take over for Dalton probably sooner rather than later. But just great move for Chicago to be patient. They ended up getting a tremendous talent in what a lot of people could end up being a really good franchise quarterback in this league.
Yeah, I think it's a good fit and a great pickup for the Chicago Bears. I think this won them the draft. Thursday night, Justin Fields, this was a guy I've been high on for a while now. He's a phenomenal player. People want to pick on his progressions and stuff like that. He showed tremendous progress with that throughout the season, which I think he doesn't get a lot of credit for. Like Jeremy said, hats off to the Chicago Bears front office. Throughout this offseason, I thought their only chances were at Mac Jones or Trey Lance, or even settling for Kellen Mond or one of those later-round quarterbacks. So the fact that they were able to stay patient and grab Justin Fields, I think it's a great day for that organization. I think the future looks bright for them.
Yeah, I'm right with both of you guys. I think, Justin Fields could probably be potential to steal the draft out of the first round. Andy Dalton is there, so he doesn't have to come and play right away, just like you mentioned, Jeremy. He can kind of sit and learn or whatever. But I think this might be a pick that could save Matt Nagy as being the head coach of the Chicago Bears. It really seemed they kind of hit the home run with David Montgomery in the draft. They got a nice running game with David Montgomery. Allen Robinson, I know he's on the franchise tag, but, if they pay him the big bucks, maybe he'll be there. So that's another weapon for Justin Fields moving forward. And, they drafted Cole Kmet, the tight end, last year. So I think he has some pieces earlier in his career to work with once he starts, and they can kind of just build around him. So this Chicago Bears team for the longest has always been known for their defense, but now with Justin Fields at the helm, they can really be known for their offense moving forward. So I love this pick for Chicago, and I think they got a franchise quarterback in Justin Fields.
Yeah, and what I do like about what happened Thursday is the fact that they made the trade up at the right time. They saw him still there on the board. There was not a lot of players in front of him that they were really eyeing. So why not grab a franchise quarterback? I know I had him on the mock draft, meaning the Chicago Bears, going after Davis Mills. But when it was all said and done, I believe they also made a perfect selection. Now, having said that, the New England Patriots didn't have to do anything, and they end up walking away with Mac Jones. Now, knowing Belichick, do you think he will fit in with Belichick's system?
Yeah, I think it will. Everyone kind of made that comparison of Mac Jones and Tom Brady. So one thing that Mac Jones got praised for was actually, going through the offense and going through his progressions and being a smart quarterback. So if you're a smart quarterback, I think you fit in Bill Belichick's system no matter what. We know Cam Newton is going to be there for a one-year deal, but after it's probably going to be Mac Jones' team moving forward. So Jarrett Stidham is probably the odd man out in all of this. So I think the New England Patriots got the player that they wanted at the quarterback position. And just like you mentioned, Roland, they didn't have to move up to get him and fell right in their laps. So I think if you're a New England Patriots fan, you can, have a good run moving forward with Mac Jones at the quarterback if you put all the pieces around him.
So let's jump. If you recall the draft on Thursday, there was a lot of late round picks that were quite shocking. What are some of those shocking picks to you, Jeremy?
Well, definitely had some athletic pass rushers go in the very end of that round. I think the one that surprises everyone was Peyton Turner, the defensive end from Houston, going to New Orleans Saints. They've made similar picks like this in the past. They selected a Marcus Davenport, who was, a small school edge rusher, and they've kind of done the same thing here. Very raw, but very talented guy, very active motor. I mean, they had to replace Trey Hendrickson down there in New Orleans, and this is kind of a guy that reminds you of him, just with his relentless motor, 6'6", just incredibly athletic guy. Gregory Rousseau, Jason Owa sneaking both back into the round. You knew the athletic pass rushers were going to go at some point. They ended up a lot of them, Joe Tryon sneaking right back into the end of that first round.
What about you, Justice?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a mid to late first round pick in the Oakland Raiders at 17 or 18 with Alex Leatherwood, the tackle from Alabama. I understand why they like him. He's a tough, gritty player, strong on the interior and in the trenches. I thought it was a bit early for him at 17. He's not a natural tackle. He's kind of a transition guard. And I thought with Tevin Jenkins and Christian Darrisaw still on the board, and even Creed Humphrey, which would have made a phenomenal center, a day one center for them, I think that would have been better options. But I like Leatherwood. I think if they wanted him, they could have traded back and still got him at whatever first round pick they wanted to get a little extra. But it's not a terrible pick. I just thought it was a bit surprising. But Mike Mayock has shown over the past two drafts, Cleveland Farrell over Josh Allen 2 years ago, Damon Arnett, last year's first round pick was kind of a shocker. He likes Mike Mayock likes his first round picks. He trusts his scouting and his gut. And, hats off to him, and I hope it pans out for him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Justin. That was probably one of the more reaches in the first round with Alex Leatherwood going to, the Las Vegas Raiders. They could have picked up another tackle or another guard that I thought would be more suited than Alex Leatherwood in that particular position. But once again, he was a five-star kid coming out of high school. He played in the SEC in Alabama. So he moved the trenches for Najee Harris and all of those running backs. He protected Tua and protected Matt Jones. So, he has a lot of film out there to kind of make you fall in love with him. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of like, will he make that transition into guard, or he's going to be put out at tackle? I don't think he's the left tackle. I think he'll be more of a right tackle. But Mike Mayock, he goes and he reaches on some players, and sometimes it pans out, but sometimes it don't. So I like the pick, but not in the particular slot that they picked them in.
Now, speaking of picks in the late round, I'm gonna come to Jeremy because over the course of this season, especially with his Pittsburgh Steelers, he's been talking about Najee Harris and whether or not the Steelers were going to go out and grab him. They did. Are you happy with that pick, Jeremy?
I am happy with that pick. I was more apprehensive just to see who else would be on the board at that point. That's the only reason I'd say I was anxious. But Najee Harris is a very good player, probably the best back in this draft class, can do it all, can run, catch. He can pass block, which is a big deal in the NFL. A lot of rookies can't come in and pass block right away. So I think that's a big part of the allure to him. He is the total package. He will start on day one. He will tote the ball, and he will help in the red zone with his size.
Now, I will tell you, it's not the players that were selected late in the rounds that were surprising to me, but it was actually the players who were not selected in the late rounds that were surprising to me. So when I look at Asante Samuel, Trayvon Morig, looking at Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, those are folks who you would have thought would have been picked up somewhere between pick 20 and 26 at bare best, but they weren't. And then there were surprises that came about, like Joe Tyron. What do you guys think about some of those players? Jeremy, I know you had some concerns about Jeremiah's size, especially as an inside linebacker, but I'm really shocked that some of those players were still left on the board in the first round.
Well, another guy who you didn't mention is Christian Barmore. I mean, during our live session on Thursday, I could have swore he'd go in the first round at some point. I think this is the first draft in a long time where you didn't see a single defensive tackle come off the board. I mean, I think that's a big thing to point out. But
so speaking of players and fitting a team scheme, let's talk about the Carolina Panthers because they actually made a move that was somewhat shocking pretty early on with the 8th pick. They go out and they get JC. So JC Horn. I mean, when you go out and get a player of this magnitude, looking at some of the other positions that you really need, was this a wise pick early on in the draft for the Carolina Panthers to make, Robert?
Well, I think, with the Carolina Panthers setup, I think they could have went, many different routes with the pick. I mean, they brought over Sam Darnold. So I guess they thought they were solidified at the quarterback position. I thought, that would be a great spot to pick up Justin Fields. But at the end of the day, I'm guessing they're content with Sam Darnold being the quarterback. They have weapons and 2,000-yard receivers with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson and a healthy Christian McCaffrey coming back. So I guess they wanted to go defense. And I tell you what, J.C. Horn is a good corner. I know it's a toss-up between him and Patrick Surtain, but with the COVID year that just went by, with them being in Carolina and J.C. Horn being in playing at, South Carolina in the SEC, that was a close trip to travel. So maybe some of those Carolina scouts actually got to a lot of those South Carolina games and say, hey, J.C. Horn is the guy, not Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, I think Robert made some great points. There were definitely some other premier guys like Justin Fields and Rashawn Slater they could have took there. But at the end of the day, man, go get your guy. They like J.C. Horn. I mean, you can't be. I think it was the perfect spot for them to pick him at because if they like J.C. Horn, they couldn't trade back and get him because they had Denver Broncos right behind him that took Patrick Surtain. They had the Dallas Cowboys that were at 10 but ended up trading out. So if they like J.C. Horn right there, that was the time to do it. They really had no other choice but to pick him there. Me personally, I agree with Robert. I'm not sold on Sam Darnold. I love Justin Fields. I think that would have been a great pick. Or if you love Sam Darnold, go get Rashawn Slater. This is a tackle that's right next to Penei Sewell for the best in the class. But, I can't get mad at them for grabbing their guy. J.C. Horn's their guy, and I think if they wanted to grab him, that was the spot to do it.
So what I would like to talk about right now is something I think is going to be talked about for quite some time when it comes to scouting and selecting the prototype player. There's a scheme out there, folks. There is a chart that specifies to scouts, to general managers, to coaches, for X type of player, we're looking for X dimensions, height, size, speed. I bring this up because we saw basically the Heisman winner drop, and finally gets picked up later on. When you look at Devontae Smith, is he a player that will have longevity in the NFL, or do you believe he dropped that far in the draft because a lot of teams have a moment of pause when it comes to his height and his size?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that, Roland. I think a lot of teams, had a moment of pause when he officially weighed in at 166 pounds. I think everyone kind of knew he was kind of thin and he had a small frame, but if he would have weighed in at 170 frame, I think, the Miami Dolphins would have, snatched him up instead of Jalen Waddle. But with that being said, I think, it did cost him a couple of spots because of the weight issue. But at the end of the day, you can't take away from the prospect that he is. He can run every route on the route tree. He can catch the ball. He can high point the ball. You can put him back on special teams and punt return. I tell you what, he played in the SEC and he played on special teams and he played, every snap. So his size wasn't a problem in the SEC. It shouldn't be that big of a problem in the NFL. I know he's going to be, maybe getting off press probably be his biggest thing. But other than that, I think he's a clean prospect. So if you're worried about his size, and I think that was one of the wrong things to worry about when it came to Devontae Smith.
He's got undeniable speed. I mean, and that's what really makes him so special. I mean, no one could really cover him this year. There were only a few times all year where corners really stuck with him. So, I mean, he is an elite playmaker. And I know we say he dropped, but he was still a top 10 pick when you think about it. The Eagles still traded up to get him in the top 10. So he fell a little bit farther, because we all thought he could go as soon as 6 or whatever, going behind Jalen Waddle. I think more people had Devonta Smith ahead. But I still think he's going to be a heck of a playmaker. I think the bigger concern is Philadelphia and the offense in general. I hope he can go there and thrive when I think there's still a lot of question marks with that Philadelphia offense.
Hey, are you guys surprised that the Indianapolis Colts did not go out initially and draft an offensive lineman, knowing that they just pulled in a quarterback that is prone to injuries?
Well, I'm going to start that since I'm the one here in Indianapolis. I am surprised, honestly. Darisaw ended up going right before to the Minnesota Vikings, so they didn't have at that point, I don't think there was a left tackle on the board that they could really get behind. I think there's a lot of value still that they were able to capitalize on day 2. I think at that point in the draft, they just didn't have a left tackle they believed in. I think they saw a guy like Kwity Paye there who can come in and start and play day 1. Kwity Paye is an athletic freak, and he's really advanced in his hand usage already.
Well, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the 2021 draft kicked off Thursday, and there were lots of surprises, a lot of thrills. I'm quite sure there were a lot of players towards the end of round 1 who were just so excited that they got pulled up into round 1. A few that weren't projected end up making it into the first round and drafted. So congratulations to all the players that were drafted. Congratulations to all the teams that made some significant moves and made statements on how they wanted to move forward in the 2021 season. So with that being said, look, we have enjoyed being here with you on the Extra Point, ESPN 1600. This has been one hell of an NFL season, especially with COVID going through the pandemic, looking at the protocols, seeing some of the unique trades and folks that decided to opt out of the season, but then working our way through the season to only see the GOAT hoist the Lombardi Trophy once again. One hell of a season, and of course kicking off the 2021 draft with some of the great selections that happened. As we get ready to wrap up this last session, I'll go around the horn and give my team final thoughts and how we are going to wrap up 2020 season here on the Extra Point. Justice, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with my hometown squad, the New York Jets. Coming in at number 2 again, Zach Wilson, that was a big need. I love the pick. He's going to be a baller. He's going to be a future superstar, I believe. And then trading up for arguably the best guard in the entire draft in Elijah Vera Tucker.
Jeremy, over to you.
Well, this has been one heck of a season, like Roland said, to start out with COVID, to go through the social justice movement we saw through the year, to the week in, week out COVID, who was playing, who was not playing. The fact that we got a full NFL season in was truly remarkable. Got to really praise these players, the NFL, the coaching staffs for making this happen for us fans. I know it would have been one very long fall if there was no football. Very happy that there was football this fall. It worked us all the way up to the NFL draft. It's been a lot of fun having you guys listen to us over the course of this NFL season and off season.
Robert.
Yeah, just like everyone mentioned, this was a hell of a football season, barring COVID. I really think, the NFL kind of, rallied the troops and kind of got everyone on board. It was kind of some hiccups throughout the season, but to kind of end everything with the draft, I think it was some great picks that was picked. I think this can be a monumental draft moving forward just because of the opt-outs in the COVID year that we had. So this draft can probably, be the game changer for the NFL moving forward for the next 10 years, especially if the Trevor Lawrences and the Justin Fields and the Zach Wilson pans out like everyone think they will be. Those are going to be the faces of the NFL moving forward for the long time to be. So I think it was some great picks from all the teams, and it's going to be some new faces moving forward that's going to take over. Tom Brady can't play forever, and so I tell you what, someone has to step in, and Patrick Mahomes is there, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, but outside of those guys, some new faces have to pop up, and I think they will with the draft that we just had.
Well, I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an absolute honor and privilege to have been the host here of the Extra Point on ESPN 1600 for the NFL season. And yes, to everyone's point, through the pandemic, through the social injustice protests, through some of the political turmoil that we all been through, it was nice to actually have football. And it was an honor to bring you analysis here on the Extra Point week in and week out. On behalf of my colleagues, Justice Gordon from New York, Jeremy Coleman from Indiana, and Robert Parker from New Jersey, I'm Roland Rainey from Colorado Springs, Colorado, and this is the Extra Point. Signing off. We'll see you next season.